Okay guys, these lessons come as part of my software, flashbrainanatomy.com. You can go and purchase it. You get all my lessons animated, and you get 3D models and much more for studying your neuroanatomy. So you can learn complete neuroanatomy without even reading a single page in a book. In last video I talked about the circle of Willis and how the blood comes to the circle, and now I'm going to talk how the blood is supplied to the brain from that circle of Willis. Okay, so that circle of Willis is like a circle made up of arteries, and if you don't know what I'm talking about right now, you should go and purchase my software and watch the lesson about the circle of Willis. Now I will illustrate that circle of Willis on the brain from basal point of view. Here's the brain, and then I will show how it looks like on the lateral side, of course the arteries that go to lateral side, and I'm gonna show how it looks like on the medial side of the brain. There are two important arteries we're going to show and how they branch on the medial side, and there's one artery here that comes from the lateral sulcus that we're going to illustrate on the lateral side of the brain. Okay, so first we have the two vertebral arteries entering the skull through the foramen magnum, the magnum foramen. Okay, and these two arteries, they join here and create one artery called the basilar artery. Okay guys, these lessons come as part of my software, flashbrainanatomy.com. You can go and purchase it. You get all my lessons animated, and you get 3D models and much more for studying your neuroanatomy. So you can learn complete neuroanatomy without even reading a single page in a book. The basilar artery goes in this sulcus. This sulcus here is called the basilar sulcus on the pons. Okay, so this is the basilar artery. Now before they joined, they gave two branches of arteries that joined, and then down there they create the anterior spinal artery. Okay, the basilar artery gives some pontine arteries here, and it also gives the inferior anterior cerebellar artery, the branches over there on the cerebellum, same on the other side. And this was the inferior cerebellar artery. There is also a superior cerebellar artery that goes above the cerebellum, up there between the brain and cerebellum, between the telencephalon and cerebellum here. Okay, now we reach one very important, and it's called the posterior cerebral artery. I will illustrate those important arteries in different colors so that you have better overview of how the blood is supplied to each side of the brain. So this artery I will illustrate it in blue color. And the artery starts here, and it enters here between the temporal lobe and the frontal lobe. Okay guys, these lessons come as part of my software, flashbrainanatomy.com. You can go and purchase it. You get all my lessons animated, and you get 3D models and much more for studying your neuroanatomy. So you can learn complete neuroanatomy without even reading a single page in a book. So if we cut this part of the brain out, and look from this side, we're gonna see something like this. And I will illustrate exactly this artery here, how it goes, and it goes actually on like this over here, and I will just illustrate it, and I will illustrate each branch and each artery that comes from the posterior cerebral artery. So first the artery starts here, and it goes like this. Okay, and first there is an anterior temporal artery. It goes something like this. Then there is an intermediate temporal branch here, and the posterior temporal branch here. So this was the posterior temporal branch, this is the intermediate temporal branch. And this was the lateral occipital artery, and then this branch over here was the anterior temporal branch. Then we have the medial occipital artery. Remember, this was the lateral occipital artery. We have the medial occipital artery that goes something like this, and then we have the dorsal branch here. This is the dorsal branch of the corpus callosum. The main artery continues on in the calcarean fissure as the calcarean branch. These lessons come as a part of my software called the Flash Brain Anatomy. You can go down there, I put the link down there in the description. You can purchase the software and watch the full full compilation of my lessons. And there's also a parietal branch and the parietal occipital branch in the sulcus here. To easier learn the names of these arteries, you should first learn the surface of the brain. There is a lesson. You can purchase my software, flashbrainanatomy.com, and there is a lesson especially explaining the surface of the brain, the sulci and gyri, and then learning these names is way easier. So this was the posterior cerebral artery, and it's same on the other side. So remember, we had the main branch here, and then we had all these little branches and arteries here. And then comes the posterior communicating artery. And from basal side, we have the internal carotid artery coming to the brain, okay? And then it joins on this posterior communicating artery. So it's coming from basal point of view, just like the vertebral arteries entering the skull. It brings the blood to the brain, the internal carotid artery. Now I will illustrate the middle cerebellar artery. It comes here from the after carotid artery joins the posterior communicating artery here, it becomes the middle cerebral artery. It enters here between the temporal lobe and the frontal lobe of the brain, and it exits here in the insula between the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe of the brain.